Good evening, everybody. Tonight is September 15th. Unfortunately, it's Karuna's last class in the series on mind training and the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. So, hey, Karuna, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Turn it over to you. Thank you.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for coming back. Again, I'll ask anything you need clarified from last week. I was going to do a quick review, like I tend to do. So if something comes up for you, then just let me know. I'm going to see if the screen sharing works okay for this. Okay. I like that it just changed. Everything just changed. Oh, here we go. I'm going to try something newer, a newer way to do it. Anything? Oh, yeah. Oh, Michael, maybe do the prayer.
Karuna, we have one question from Helen.
Let's do the okay, let's do the prayer and so everyone just let's get here. Let's just be in the present moment, even though the present moment is impossible to find. So just get grounded. You can feel your seat on the, your butt on your seat. Just feel the connection there. Feel from the back, maybe sitting in a chair. Be aware of the space in your room. The sounds outside, if there are any. Just very present. The feeling comes when we connect with this moment. There's a feeling of miraculousness. That this life is like a miracle. That's what the person who really is able to capture the moment, whose mind gets sort of trained to not be wavering from this thought to that thought. Usually we go between the future and the past. We're very rarely in the present. We're planning the future, thinking about it, worrying about the future. Most fear and worry is because the mind's focused on the future. Sadness often comes from focusing on the past. Loss, as if we lost something, but we didn't lose anything. We've never lost anything because we never had anything. That's a good meditation to do. So at this moment, we just put our mind into the idea that our sense of reliance, rather than relying on material things, which are usually what we do, or relying on things that help us feel better, whether it's medicine or food or entertainment. So those are the usual things we rely on for happiness. So now I just think that what we rely on is our own spiritual attainment and our future attainment, and the helpers that help us attain that, and then also relying on our own Buddha nature that will continue to manifest and guide us in the form of a guru or a lama also. And as a Buddha, if you can communicate with the Buddha himself or herself. So for a moment, just think, I'm going to rely on that. And also the spiritual path. The mind itself becomes the spiritual path. It's not like what we do is, most of us, is just rehearse. This is okay. But at some point, your mind, without effort, will become the path. So think for a minute that those are what you're relying on. Okay, and don't forget that we're doing this for the benefit of all living beings. Okay, great compassion. Okay, let me find, okay, there was a question, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Last session, my power went out in the middle. Power outage from PG&E, and I'm in SoCal, so I didn't know if your power went out also, or if
Mine-
it did not, then you continued. Yours was fine.
Yeah, mine went out. How long was yours out for? I guess that's what it was. Yeah, because I was knocked offline.
The remainder of the session was halfway through.
Yeah, no, I got back on. Was it
Okay.
halfway through, Michael? Do you remember? Maybe it was.
Mine lasted, the lights came back on around midnight, 11:30 at night.
I see.
Somewhere like that.
Well, yeah, I
Okay.
don't, I have a generator that goes on automatically, but I don't think it went on last week. Either that or I didn't. No, I don't think it did.
Okay.
Sorry.
It came back at different times, different places.
I
Mine,
see, right.
they give an estimate like at 1 a.m. and mine was like at 11.
Okay. Yeah,
11:30.
mine was off for just like 5 minutes or so, I think.
Mm,
But it
okay.
did go off another time in the week, I remember. Yeah.
Right, well, okay, as long as there was a recording, because I didn't know if yours went off, then there wouldn't be a recording either.
We jumped back
Yeah.
on and had continued recording, I believe, right, Michael?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
wait, I'll wait till the recording. Thank
Okay, thank you. That was an easy question. That's
Mhm.
okay. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Okay. Okay, what do you see there? Do you see just one
Review.
slide?
Just,
Four.
no, so your slides are down at the bottom as well. You're showing your PowerPoint
Okay,
share
I was
screen.
trying to, okay, that's not what I was trying to do. This
that
is
should-
called presenter media, and it's supposed to just give you the slide and give me the notes. Okay. Okay, let's do the old fashioned way. Okay. That's,
There
you're
you
seeing
go.
one, okay,
Yep.
good.
You're good.
Okay, so because we obviously were not going to finish this text, so then I thought there's so much, it's not preliminary. This is not preliminary what I'm teaching now, and haven't been since the first, during the first class, we did some preliminary things. But this is really what makes a clear understanding of how mind training works. Without the clear understanding, it's not, I mean, it's useful, but we can make it super deep by really understanding these characteristics and these subtle intricacies. So if you don't mind, we'll continue along that. I just wanted to review because there is, was it clear last week? Well, let me just go over it again. So when we say, the emptiness of a self, okay, that's the big thing in Buddhism, isn't it? In everything, in fact, it's said that all of the teachings of Buddha, that Buddha taught, 100 volumes, 108 volumes of teachings. I think each volume has something like 100 folios in it. There's a lot. It's taught for 41 years. And we hear, things like bodhicitta and perfect human rebirth and karma and impermanence and death. All of these things really were taught, they say, for the sole purpose of helping living beings attain the insight into reality. Okay. Insight into reality means that we all hear maybe it's emptiness, shunyata, emptiness, or if you haven't heard it, you will hear it a lot. And emptiness, and it's kind of like the slogan of Buddhism, and or the tagline. So I think it's good to get the right understanding. When we say emptiness, it's emptiness of a false self. Okay, so we say the purpose of emptiness is not, in a way, it's not to realize emptiness as much as it is to realize reality. Okay, so let's flip that on its back and think realized reality means, so this is something where we really have to become comfortable with it, and it takes a long time for most of us. So what that means is that to become comfortable with this idea that we don't see things as they are. And no matter what teaching you pursue after this, what direction your practice goes. I don't want you to ever lose sight of the fact that those are not the conclusions. Okay, those are not the final resting place. It's like, oh wow, incredible retreat, meditation, and you realize impermanence. Because everything in Buddhism that we talk about is, okay, so everything we're talking about is conceptual, right? It's conceptual. We're talking about it, we think about it. But again, the beauty of this path, the beauty of these sets of teachings is that we don't stop at the conceptual by any, in fact, the conceptual is really pretty much the beginnings, a beginner step. Now we could stay in the conceptual whole life, by the way, depending on our own ability to go deeper. But I want to emphasize that all of these teachings, perfect human rebirth, guru devotion, impermanence, compassion, bodhicitta, are all meant to be realized non-conceptually, okay? They're all, every single one, it's kind of like, I don't think Jesus was acting from his incredible compassion from a conception. It was the quality of his being, right? To say the quality of his being means that his mind was in the nature, his mind was in compassion. It wasn't like thinking, oh, now I'll, give my body away and on the cross. Who could do that, right? I mean, think of it conceptually, that'd be very tough to do. It's not tough to do for that bodhisattva, which I think definitely Jesus was bodhisattva, maybe Buddha, I don't know. But so to that kind of natural instinctive compassion and love and familiarity with impermanence, that is all intuitive. And I think intuitive is not the best word, but to contrast it with conceptual. Okay, it's not a thinking thing. You're not thinking about compassion. So mothers, when they, and maybe fathers too, but mothers, when they're caring for their child, it's not like, oh, I have to care for my child and this is what it needs. It's like this intuitive, right? It's and of course some moms maybe are not as intuitive, but there's this natural, it's instinctive. Maybe that's the way I say it. It's instinctive, okay? And they look in the baby's eyes and they just feel this incredible love, right? Or look down at her face, whatever, the moment that almost the baby comes out from the womb, that we're aiming more for that level of experience, and not like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to love my baby now. Let's see, let me get the manual out, Dr. Spock or whatever, not Dr. Spock anymore. So, you know what I mean? So we have these qualities. So when it comes to a mother's natural love and affection for her child, that spontaneity, that non-contrived love and compassion is what will happen for all of us with all of these different levels of teachings. Okay, that's what they're called. That's when they're called realizations. Okay, so the reason we meditate conceptually and intellectually is eventually to get to the non-conceptual, non-intellectual, okay, experiential. In this tradition, in which there's 4 traditions in Tibet, they're not in conflict with each other, they just emphasize different things. This tradition, the teachings that we focus on or that we present from are the Gelug tradition. And the Gelug tradition is sort of it was a reform Buddhist tradition in Tibet. And what it was reforming was the intellectual vigor of the teachings, because it's not good enough to just say, yeah, I'll meditate on compassion. People do that, right? But how do you know it's compassion? We need a guidebook. Meditate on love. And we hear this a lot, a lot now. It's kind of dangerous, actually. I had a client write to me, and he kind of said he'd realized emptiness. He explained it, but it was a lot of I emptiness. I saw this, I saw that, and so I was suspicious. I didn't challenge him because it's not my place to challenge him. But it didn't sound like so. Seeing reality means seeing emptiness, but seeing emptiness means seeing the emptiness of unreality. Does that make sense? Seeing when we see like a what's that called? Well, like an illusion, right? Or a mirage. So when you see a mirage, and if, let's just say, you really believe it's water, okay? And when you get closer and closer, then you see the emptiness of the water, right? That's what's meant by this emptiness. It doesn't mean there's not something there, because in fact, there are heat waves there, or whatever it is. There's something there. So emptiness does not mean nothingness. So everything that we perceive incorrectly. Okay, that's where we start getting comfortable with that. Comfortable is not the right word, but familiar. Everything we perceive erroneously. So I'm not saying everything that we perceive is not there. Okay, there's some things that we perceive that actually are not there. So I'm perceiving this lamp in front of me as something that's there truly, inherently, independently, solidly. None of those are there. Okay? All of that is a myth. All of that is a myth created by ignorance. Okay? But if I were to see those for what they are, when I see that lamp is not permanent, it's appearing to me as permanent solid, but it's empty of that. Okay? It's empty of being permanent and solid. That's the emptiness of the lamp. That's not the deepest emptiness of the lamp, but that's a starting point. Okay? So when we talk about, you have to have emptiness of something. So you don't just have emptiness. That's like a void, right? Like outer space kind of void, that kind of scary feeling that if you fell out of a space capsule, you'd be in the void, right? It's not like that, okay? It's not the same. It's seeing something empty of the way it appears. Absent, how about absent of the way it appears? Okay, so there is a conventional self and there's a false self. It's the false self that we're trying to perceive the emptiness of. So we'll go on. So we need to differentiate the conventional self. It actually exists because it functions. Someone in there is functioning. Someone is drinking this coffee. It's not you, right? It's over here. But what is that? So what we think that is, drinking the coffee, we think constantly, habitually, since beginningless time. And that's what gets kind of scary. It could be scary, nerve-wracking. That guy doesn't exist. And I would say it all the time. I'm drinking a coffee. I'm going to work. I'm going to go to sleep. Maybe I'll take a shower. So maybe I'll read this book. Let's watch I think I'll watch some television. That I is indicative. That I is who we think we are, right? Okay. That I is what this wheel of sharp weapons is attacking. That I is a hallucination. And hallucinations don't exist the way they appear. And in fact, this false self that we hallucinate doesn't exist at all. So it means how we think we are doesn't exist at all. I didn't say we don't exist at all. I didn't say that. I said that projection, that idea, that concept doesn't exist at all. But there's a conventional self, because someone is sitting here drinking the coffee and listening to our talk, right? What is that? That's what's referred to as the conventional self. That conventional self is what practices the path. So the conventional self, maybe I should go up because I'm not sure this is helpful. I mean, I feel it's helpful, but I'm not you. Let's look at, because we have to know what this thought transformation practice is all about. The thought transformation practice is all about attacking, eliminating, confronting the false self, okay? Not the conventional self. Now, we have five, or usually for five aggregates as a living being. We have the body and we have the mind. The mind is, we sometimes divide into four different groups. Don't worry about that. So when we say Karuna, or when we say Denise, or when we say Michael, when we say Susan, when we say, Patrick, whoever, all of us, Contessa, when we say these things, there's imputation that goes on those five aggregates. When we say Karuna, I don't impute on Patrick, do I? His five aggregates. I don't impute on Michael that's Karuna, do I? No. So I impute on this guy, these five. You impute on your five. Okay. And in that, there's lots of things going on, experiences, there's emotions, there's sensations, there's perceptions, and they're all going on at different rates of change. Okay. And the self is not separate from all that. The conventional self is not separate from all that stuff. But here's a trick. It's not identical either. It's imputed onto these. And what happens with the false self is so I impute onto my tongue sensation that I'm thirsty. And then I say I'm thirsty, right? So thirst is happening. That we're not denying. What we are denying is I am thirsty, because what happens is we are identifying inseparably from the thirst. Because the way I say it is, let's just say you deny quenching your thirst. Then you get irritated. Let's say you deny it, like your hands are tied behind your back and the water shut off. Okay. Slowly, I begin to suffer, right? I get uncomfortable first, then I suffer, and then maybe I start, like after 2 to 3, 4, 5 hours or 3 days, I start hallucinating, I start going crazy, right? So that's because the I has merged with thirst. I has merged with the sensation. It can be the same for your emotions, our emotions, depression. Okay. When the I is merged with depression, the more it's merged with depression and believes it is depression, then the more suicidal and more we struggle. The answer to this is what this Wheel of Sharp Weapons and this thought transformation does actually, is the thought transformation practices is very incumbent upon an understanding of emptiness, that there is that this self that we're so tied to, this cherishing, is not really who we are, and in fact is the enemy. And when we have insight into emptiness, and this can be conceptual insight into emptiness, you begin to see yourself, that self, as a hallucination. It's like a cartoon character, but you thought it was real. Okay, like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, this big, loud, omnipotent voice, right, going out the kingdom of Oz. And little Toto goes behind the curtain. It's just this little guy. His feet don't even reach the ground. For those of you who remember the movie, right? That's like this false self, ego. You want to call it ego? That's fine too. And so we're always imputing on all these sensations and experiences we're having, whether they're emotions or sensations or perceptions. We look at politicians and we get irritated and pissed off because we're projecting onto them as well this permanence, this self-existence. Got it? We don't see them for how they really are. So I'm going to leave this because this goes more into teachings on emptiness. So this false self, the one we're trying to see doesn't exist, it appears to be sort of self-established. And there were no, like you would say, if you talk to ordinary people, and they say, or something like, I just need some me time right now, right? And we, okay, yeah, you should take a little time. You've been working hard. That is a teaching on emptiness, because that's the false self. And that's the false self. And that's the self that we're slave to. That's why we are not liberated. The difference between liberation and non-liberation is just that, is knowing that that false self, first of all, it doesn't even exist, but it appears to exist. And then through this appearance of this hallucination, we follow it all over the place and do all these crazy things. We kill people for it, right? We do drugs for it. I mean, you know, substance abuse, alcohol. We overeat. We oversex, all this stuff, you know. We overget anxiety and depression. So when the practitioner of Lojong is when it's happening, you might have depression come in, right? But because of the practice of Lojong, you kind of go, aha, nice try. I'm really glad you showed up, depression. Because now you showed me again another manifestation or trick of the false self. And the second step, so that's really huge. And the second step, well, there are two things that happen. One is kind of rejoicing, like fantastic that came up, because you really understand karma. It's not just a concept. You understand that's karma rising. And then the second thing you understand is that self that wants your attention, right? You know, like have another drink, or, you know, you'll be okay, or get depressed. That one is empty. So the moment you do the two things of conventionally, yes, it's a rising of karma, of cause and effect. Yes, you created that hallucination. And the second thing is it's an hallucination. It's you at our level, we do both. And I think for a long time, not just our level. So this ego, this false self is like that. Remember we talked last week, I think that reminds you of, you know, that when you look in those huge minds, you know, the open minds, what are they called? There's a name for that. Open pit mines. And you see those huge kind of tractor things, and the tires are like the size of a house, you know. And there's a little guy up there, or maybe a woman up there driving the thing around. That's like this. That's like there's some little gal or guy in our head, isn't it? Telling you, you know, saying, oh, maybe you should take a shower now. You know, if you take a shower now, you'll have time to finish watching the news, you know. And if you, well, maybe you should record the news. You know, then maybe you should, maybe before, maybe put the recorder on, record the news. Maybe a bath would be better. So heat the bath, fill the bath, and then go in and make something really quick. Maybe what you can make quickly is a salad. And then with the salad, you know, just, right? All the time. I got to get to work. So maybe if I go to work a little earlier, I'll be able to have a cup of coffee and stop by Pete's or something, because their coffee is, that little voice, and it's not so little, that voice is what we're talking about. That's a false self. That's the false self. It's like in our head. Now, when we study deeper in the teachings on emptiness, I like to share this with you. So that voice is going on, right? That self is going on, right? So that self is false. But how does it exist? Isn't there something there? Me? Isn't there a me somewhere? And of course, like I said, someone becomes enlightened, someone practices the path. So it's not like we're just a matter of space. Okay, that's an extreme view that we don't exist. So when we get an appreciation for this empty nature of the self, then Lojong practice becomes very, very profound. It's quick, it speeds things up. Because with a false self, if someone tells you your nose is really big, and it's interesting, because I don't remember it being as big as it is now. Did you do something? Did you lose weight or something? Why is it so big? And, you know, it's like, and by the way, that's just an analogy. It could be that anything where you feel insulted, right? Think about feeling insulted. It's like Michael's really, you know, not on his game these days. You know, he used to be really, really good at what he does. He's been running, you know, he has staff under him, but he seems to be spacing out and left a little, he seems to be like a little messier with his reports, kind of slacker, right? And Michael's listening to this going, okay, Karuna, I know you're just teasing me, but But, you know, there's something like, what is that? And so Michael, being a thought transformation practitioner, is really happy that I'm doing this, because it shows that his ego maybe is getting defensive, right? Like most of it, or maybe he's just humored. But all of those, this false self. So it really has a lot to do with the preliminaries, where we got to be convinced that we want to attain awakening. Okay, so always go back. We always go back to the preliminaries. So there's a me sitting inside Michael's head saying, I don't know, my reports seem as good as ever. I don't know what Karuna's talking about. Okay, it's always commenting. And if you want to talk about insecure, that's the false self. Okay, if you want to talk about who's frightened, it's the false self. If you want to talk about who's unsure, that's the false self. Okay, and this false self is what creates karma. Okay, so from this insecurity, we have the rising of the disturbing emotions. So if you want to know why you're worried about giving your report tomorrow, your presentation, it's from feeling insecure. But who's insecure is this false self, not you. Okay, now, so when we meditate, and we use meditation on emptiness as the best therapy, you start looking for that false self. Who's nervous? Who's nervous about this presentation tomorrow? Usually what we do is we think, okay, just do the 9-round breathing, or take 3 deep breaths, and, you know, see everyone is going to be naked in the room, and, you know, all those other things, right? Those don't actually solve the problem, do they? They can alleviate the problem temporarily. The only solution to insecurity is realizing the false self is selling you, you know, a bag of lies. So, because the false self thinks that everyone is judging me when I give the report tomorrow, and then because when I was in 7th grade and I had to give that public talk, and I stood up and I couldn't stop laughing in front of everybody because I was so nervous, I could never give the talk, right? So I'm no good at public talks or you know, presentations. And then I did it again because I was nervous 2nd time when I was in 9th grade, and the teacher had to kind of come to my rescue, and everyone was laughing their way, right? So then that brings up, we have the same reaction, right? So it builds up strong habits. And then we become just addicted to our self-destructive behavior. And even we say, I know, God, I shouldn't do that. But the habit has become too strong. Emptiness of the self will get rid of that. Also, there's an emptiness of the action too. You can do it that way. There's also emptiness of the audience. You can do it that way. Okay. A disturbing emotion is a state of mind that when it arises, it makes us lose our self-control. Okay. So you just think about when you long for someone or greedy for more, you lose, a disturbing emotion is going to come up. You know, you start thinking of it all the time, right? Maybe your promotion, or maybe your demotion, or maybe someone you feel attracted to. So like feeling someone you were attracted is very common for all of us. So what happens is we perceive the person and ourselves falsely as truly, wow, you know, he's truly existent, good looking and nice and considerate, or she's truly existent, affectionate, caring, and pretty, right? That's what we do. Now that's almost without any thought. It just happens. You see that. If you don't catch it, then what happens is then you start longing or wanting to possess it, be close to it, have more of it. Okay? Then you're thinking of it all the time. That's a disturbing emotion. But you know, people think that's happiness because they forget what real happiness is, or they haven't really experienced much of it, or they don't feel that they are entitled to it. Like the incredible peace and satisfaction you might get from meditation, or just a very spiritual walk in the wilderness, or you're in retreat, or, you know, sharing your time with someone, you know, you're very connected to. Okay. So in this text, it talks about the foe or the enemy. In this, the solid entity, me, I, that's the enemy that the wheel of sharp weapons is attacking. The false imaginary projection onto the conventional self. So there's a conventional self. And think about the word conventional. It's a kind of good word. Or relative, the conventional, relative. So relative self, or, same as conventional self, is interesting because what relative means is related, right? I mean, if you look at the start looking at the root of the word. So related means like I'm related to my brother, right? So I'm not a brother without that relationship. So everything we define as me is actually in relationship to something else. It's related, it's deep. And so we use the technical word that's used is it's dependent upon. Okay. We won't, again, we're not going to go into this too much because this is another class. But you start thinking about dependent and in your daily reflection, think about how everything is dependent. So here's the riddle. Everything appears independent. And that's something we need to meditate on. So we get a sense that, oh yeah, I do see everything as, if you look around your room, around you right now, this is what we mean. Everything that appears in your eyesight, you never maybe some people never thought about it, but the way it's appearing to us is it's appearing as independent over there on its own. I mean, that's really a tree over there, right? That's really a book, okay? Over there, when I look at this book, I see it as independent of me, right? This is, okay, so this is extremely important. This is how we see everything when we go through our life, every single thing. But you know what? This book does not exist independently. It can't exist independently. It's an impossible way of existing. If it existed independently, how would we know it? Don't we know the book because we see it? And when we see it, don't we think about it, or it creates an image in our mind? So isn't there mind experience with this book as well? If there's no mind, is there a book? So according to the highest school in Buddhism, which we've got 4 philosophical, in the highest school, there's no book without a mind. Why? Because if there was, it would be independently existing. And nothing exists independently. Too much?
Karuna, I have a question. The
Yes,
book it exists for somebody else.
Let me take the share screen off for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah. That way I can see you better. Okay.
The book exists for somebody else, though.
That's a mind, right?
Gone.
Right. We can assume that, right?
Yeah.
But the book existing for somebody else, is that book existing independent on their mind?
No. No
No?
more than it is on ours.
Right. So it's dependent on a mind, isn't it? The book existing.
Oh, I see. On any, okay.
It's very profound, so it's okay if it doesn't come naturally. I still have this argument with different Buddhist friends of mine. Because remember, I'll say it again. There's 4 philosophical schools that defined reality. And they already define it slightly more and more subtle. Okay? It's very, very important for us that when we're interested in this topic to study all the 4 schools. Okay? In fact, in the Gelug tradition, we place a very, very, very big importance in the monastic community upon the practice of debate. This is a very, very robust discipline. It's not for sissies. We always laugh about the debate, the political debates. Those are not debates. Okay. Now these debates, the little kids, little 8, 9-year-olds, they start doing these debates, but they memorize the debates because there's formulas. So that's not really debate. They, he says this and I'm supposed to say that kind of thing. But they do that for years and years, memorize all these different debates. But when they get older and they really debate, it's so powerful because what you have to do, let's say I'm debating with Michael. I'm going to have a debate with Michael. And so we know we're getting the topic. Let's say we're going to debate the nature of the self. And then he'll say, okay, I'm going to take the Vaibhashika school. So the Vaibhashika is the lowest school. And he has to try, and I'm going to say, okay, you take the Vaibhashika school. I'm going to take the Chittamatran school, which is one of the higher schools. And then it's a formula. I mean, you get busted if you say ridiculous things, like that are not logical. So we start off the debate, and he doesn't believe in the Vaibhashika. He's already studied Madhyamika, highest school. But in order to train our minds, he's going to try his best to defeat me as a Vaibhashika, and I'm in the highest school, Madhyamika, or Chittamatran. So you have to take both sides and be able and try to win. Okay. That is a meditation. That gets a person's mind incredibly trained and flexible and sharp. And if you have a chance, to take teachings from these the Tibetan geshis like that, you might see some of that razor sharp thinking, ability to think. And the reason we do that is so that when you go into meditation, you have that manual with you in your head. So then when you start meditating on emptiness, and emptiness is a tricky subject, many people, yogis, meditators, bodhisattvas, over the ages, believe they're meditating on the deepest, more subtle insight into emptiness of the self or the emptiness of an object. And when in fact they're not, they're mistaken. And that has repercussions. Because you can think, oh, wow, I'm meditating on the right thing. And you have to meditate on emptiness correctly. Meditating on emptiness correctly leads you to enlightenment, liberation and enlightenment. So I remember my teacher, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, talking about a number of times. So what happens is that, for example, some texts, some lower schools, talk about emptiness as being like space. And so they develop this insight into space, and they meditate on space, you see, thinking it's emptiness, voidness. And the meditation on space leads one, and it's very, very profound meditation, but it's not emptiness at all. Not at all. And the meditation on space leads one to rebirth as either an animal, or there's one kind of formless God that meditates on space, which is very profound. But you just fall back into samsara. It's not, there's no liberation there. Okay, there's no so how do you know? You think, I'm gonna say you, I mean us, right? So you think that you're meditating on emptiness because you're meditating on space, because you don't have that sharpness of intellect that's going to guide you. Because if you're in a retreat up in the Himalayas and you're 3 days from the nearest whatever village or your teacher, you got to have this stuff. You got to be ready. Or you're just in your house here and you don't have access to your teacher. But you have access to the texts and you have access to the teachings. And so we have to become our own teacher. And the way we do this, study, and then contemplate, debate, discuss, meditate. Okay. The meditation emptiness can be dangerous if you do it wrong. Because you get just, yeah. Okay. So do you need a break?
3 minutes.
3-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay. See you in 3 minutes. Right now, it's 7:21, so 7:24. Anyone who's late is going to have to repeat what I just said. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Any questions? Before I continue? Okay.
It seems like the subject-object relationship has big play right here.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. Yeah. How objects exist. Well, so really what we're talking about is how do objects exist? And then we're talking about how does the subject exist? And it's helpful to sometimes speak of it as a subject object, because and so you can go through the 4 philosophical schools, and how those subject and object exist is defined differently. And they're not only definitions, by the way. This is what happens in our awakening, in our unfolding into understanding reality. In our meditation, we actually do also go through those levels. So they're not just like, well, why did they talk about that? Why didn't they just talk about the highest school, the highest view? The reason they don't just talk about the highest view is because as meditators and as practitioners, we do go through all 4 levels and understand in our quest to understand the self and our quest to understand objects. Okay. Okay, let's see. So we've got a lot of time, but when we talk about self-grasping and we talk about self-cherishing, right? And I did talk about these before, a little bit, but I thought I went too fast. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I'll just go through this. Oh, sorry. So self-grasping is, in a way, it's more subtle than self-cherishing. I think it was more subtle. Sometimes it's described as, well, when the self grasps, that means grasping at an inherently true self. Or, depending on the 4 schools, which school, it can be, the lower school says, it's the grasping at an independently existent self, a self that exists permanently, independently, and monolithically, in other words, without parts. Okay, so we grasp the self in one of those 3 ways, or all 3 ways. Okay, so that's a lower school. It's good to start there even. And what happens with self-grasping is, because I believe myself, who I am, you grasp onto a self as existing in as Alex Bergen says, in an impossible way. So this we can't just do in this class, but what is done is we meditate and we start saying I this and I that, and then you turn the mind around and you try and find that I, because we're talking about it all the time. When we say I'm tired, it's still a wrong concept. We're grasping an I that's truly existent. So, for example, when we say I'm tired, what's happening is there's some sort of mental factor of fogginess coming into the mind, and then there's some sensations on the body that are tired, or whatever you want to call it, and we say I'm tired, but it's kind of weird, because the I is perceiving the foggy mind or the tired mind, and the I is perceiving the tired body, the fatigued body, right? So it's separate from those things, but it says I am that. That's just a quick example. Which is it? Is it separate or same? Can't be both. If it's the same, then how can it see the tiredness? A mirror can't see itself. So these are the things you start reflecting on. Then you start looking for that I. So we think this corresponds to reality and how things actually exist. This is a belief. So the two ways, the two levels of grasping is we take something as its object. The mind projects this appearance. Okay, so it looks at the lamp and it seems as though there's somebody talking inside. Okay, so you take the mind projects this appearance of an I, me, right? I'm tired. The mind projects this appearance and it seems as though there's somebody talking inside our head, me. This is a perception, right? So we're perceiving a me. And then a second thing that happens with the grasping is we think this corresponds to reality. We never question it. We're actually addicted to it. And we think it corresponds to reality, how things actually exist. Well, you know, Trump really is a bad guy. And that's kind of an extreme one. But that's an example of unfortunately, I mean, fortunately, he's not really a bad guy. You can't find the guy, actually. So the first thing is to cut off that deluded belief. So the first thing is just start questioning everything. Like when we say, you know, I'm not very good at math. You start questioning, okay? That's a belief that corresponds to a misperception of reality. Then get the mind to stop projecting that deceptive appearance. That's the spiritual path. When the mind stops projecting it, that's actually a fully enlightened being. Then self-cherishing comes from self-grasping. So I grasp a solid me, right? But the self-cherishing is I'm the most important person, you count less. And no matter what you think, how nice you are, we always think that we're the most important person. It's an attitude. It's you count slightly less or a lot less, depending on your closeness to the person. But when you're in the kitchen making dinner, you are thinking also about yourself. And like, I hope I get enough to eat, or I'm making this for me. I hope there's enough salt in it. It's just our default position. Me. You know, having to have it my way. Now, some people are more generous, of course. I have to have the attention. I have to be first in line. I have to have the best seat. I have to be most recognized. But even going more subtle than that, I think is anytime that we are concerned with our happiness, it'll be self-cherishing. Self-cherishing mind will be there. Okay. And the ultimate remedy is this wisdom that we've been talking about. Generate a correct view of reality. Things exist non-inherently and things exist independence. Okay. So that's all we've been talking about. Remember way back when the two approaches to talking about bodhicitta and thought transformations. One is first talk from the point of view of absolute bodhicitta, which is the wisdom of emptiness. So now we've done that. Took 3.5 classes. And now we're talking about the relative awakening mind, the bodhicitta, okay? The actual bodhicitta. So the relative awakening mind, or what's referred to as bodhicitta, is this is the definition, is the aspiration to attain the fully awakened state of Buddhahood, omniscience, in order to effectively help free all sentient beings from suffering. It's fine that all suffering beings includes you, by the way. This is the principal subject of thought transformation. So let's look at that again. So the principal subject, when we talk about karma and like killing the foe, which is the misunderstanding of the wrong self, the false self, all that, why we do it? Because that is what's going to generate the aspiration to attain the fully awakened state of Buddhahood, omniscience, in order to effectively help free all sentient beings from suffering. When we have this bodhicitta, then we are labeled as a bodhisattva. Okay, then we're a bodhisattva. And someone who has that bodhicitta, this practice of thought transformation is a natural practice. Okay, because having the bodhicitta that attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and then this stupid self-cherishing guy always pops up and says, what about me? You know, can I come along? And if I come along, can I have, you know, good food, a dinner, movie? What about me? Don't forget me. So they're mutually exclusive, actually. So this relative awakening mind is often referred to as like a diamond. Even when it is first developing in you, okay, in me, it already outshines all the qualities of those self-motivated spiritual practices. Okay, so this it's really this mind is not something that people talk about, and it sounds like an attitude. Okay, but what I'd like to share with you, I've said in a couple classes, this Bodhi awakening mind is not an attitude. Okay, an attitude accompanies it. This awakening mind is a crystal clear state of mind. It's something, it exists within us potentially. And this crystal clear, subtle mind of bodhicitta, when it starts awakening on its own, only through our practice, our merit, when it starts, eventually it'll take over. Eventually it'll take over. You don't have to do anything then. I mean, you do practice, but the practice is happening 24/7. It becomes that awakening mind starts taking over, and it's nurtured by this understanding of reality. Okay, and because it's not stimulated, it's not activated in us. It's in there. It's not activated. And 99.9% of the people on the planet don't even know about this thing. I think it might be, I don't matter to you maybe, but I often think that this is what is meant by the Christ mind. I think that on Christ, I think that is bodhicitta. And when I look at it, what it must have sounded like in earlier days. So that mind will take you over. So like for Jesus, who possessed by the Christ mind, giving his body away was no big deal, right? Because he didn't have that conventional false self. I mean, not conventional. He didn't have the false self anymore. So remember that when we look at the practice of mindfulness, and when we look at the practice of vipassana, and when we look at the practice in terms of the Hinayana vehicle, that's why it says here, outshines all the qualities of those self-motivated spiritual practices. Self-motivated. The practice in the Theravada tradition is self-motivated. It does lead to liberation, but it does not rid the mind of self-cherishing. And it does lead to liberation, but liberated beings, arhats, eventually will have to re-enter the path in order to attain full enlightenment. That's amazing, huh? So this bodhicitta mind is like the sun. A fraction of light has the power to dispel the darkness over the whole land. When the awakening mind starts to rise, so too does it immediately dispel the internal darkness of misery and emotional afflictions. Emotional afflictions like, why doesn't he like me? Or am I being passed over for promotion? Or am I going to be able to pay my rent this month? Those are all disturbing emotions, by the way. Those are all emotional afflictions. And when the awakening mind starts to become activated, it's like, what the hell am I involved with those things for? Look at this awakening mind as this crystal diamond. And it's blissful, by the way. So the happiness that generates from the awakening mind, like an emotion, it has no comparison to the emotion of the relative emotions of pleasure, enjoyment, sex, drinking, getting high, surfing. Those are considered very, 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 they're not considered even base, they're considered suffering. They're considered suffering. They're so dissatisfying. Compared to the awakening mind, you wouldn't trade it in. You're so excited about it. You don't need to sleep at night. When it starts awakening, it gets more advanced. And your mind does enter into single pointed concentration, does enter into samadhi much easier. So it's also like a medicinal plant. It has the power to cure any illness. As soon as the awakening mind arises, it begins to cure the chronic illnesses grounded in those emotional afflictions. So that has to do with the concept of how illnesses arise in sort of Tibetan medicine and Chinese medicine, that medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, that disease arise through an imbalance of the winds, and the winds have a imbalance of the winds as a result of imbalance in emotions. So there are two approaches to developing this relative awakening mind. Okay, in this is in the Tibetan tradition. This is very well known and commonly known. So one tradition is a 7-point cause and effect, and the other one is exchanging self with others. And there was one great Gelupa teacher, Pabonpa Rinpoche, who combined these into the 11 points. So we're not going to go, this is a whole, right? This is a whole course of its own. I'm sure Michael, maybe Denise have done this, where you talk about the 7-point cause and effect of, and I'm not going to teach this now, but just so I don't leave you hanging. Recognizing all beings as your mother is the first step. Recollecting their kindness, the wish to repay their kindness, then generates to love. Love generates to great compassion. Great compassion generates, leads to the wholehearted resolve to attain the wish to attain enlightenment for others. And number 7, it activates the bodhicitta itself. Okay. In the other, exchanging self with others. Yeah, so one thing I would say is sometimes the 7-point cause and effect is considered an approach for people who have more faith-oriented personality, faith-oriented to the teachings, and the exchange self and others is sometimes referred to as those with maybe sort of a higher level of analytical understanding or approach. And then the 4 steps are how self and others are equal, contemplating the many faults resulting from self-cherishing, contemplating the many good qualities resulting from cherishing others, and then the actual contemplation on the interchange or the exchange of self and others. Why am I covering this? Is because this all has to do with when you want to use those verses in the Wheel of Sharp Weapons. This is, the verses are based on these 4 points. Okay, the 7 points as well come into it, but in particular, these 4 points are being developed in the practice of Lojong. Okay, now when we're involved in this exchanging self with others, then comes the question, well, how do we do that? Right? And the how is countless ways we do it, right? But there's the primary meditation or practice is what's referred to as tonglen, or giving and taking. Okay, and that's what the text spends, that's what it's doing when it says different parts of the text. What you're doing is you're subjecting yourself to the suffering that others have. Now, why do we do that? There's the reason we do that is we know that the self-cherishing mind is the mind that leads us. Okay. So the shortcomings are that all beings are equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And all beings constantly seek happiness and avoid suffering. This is endless. Okay. So until we have a different attitude about ourselves, it's endless. So you think about endless, that's pretty exhausting. And so we begin to have a different attitude towards our own happiness. This has to turn around. And so now this is a bit, I don't know, this is going to take some faith, right? So this wrong conception makes me create much negative karma, cause and effect, by forcing me to work for self-happiness, self-perfection, good reputation, and notoriety. Those are the four things that we spend most of our life doing. So it makes me jealous of those who have greater fortune than I have. You know, someone has a better car, or somehow got a gift from their parents, inherited a bunch of money. You know, like we're happy, but you know, maybe this little part of us is jealous. And then when we are rich or powerful, we were very proud of that. And you notice this is happening in the country. You can see this. It's almost like a total lack of sensitivity and a great sense of entitlement, right? That I'm entitled to, you know, I worked for this. You know, they're just lazy. Okay. And then we get angry when we hear rude words or see ugly objects. This is a whole meditation, by the way, for a long-term meditation. Regard other beings as enemies. This is all what the self-cherishing does. It breaks my relationships with friends. It also caused me not to get along with my teacher, my parents, my spouse, my brothers and sisters. I just keep following my old habitual patterns and beliefs. Okay, we're almost going to get to another section.
Karuna, I've never been there. Can someone explain those to me?
What do you mean?
All that stuff.
Oh, you've never been proud of being rich and powerful? Would you like me to remind you?
Oh my goodness.
So when we think about, because we're taking a different approach to happiness, right? This is where the spiritual person gets developed, you know, becomes activated, we could say. So if we think about, you know, what we usually are told as we grow up and in this culture, that the success is, I mean, okay, no one says it this way because everyone's careful. Success is the root of happiness. That is what we believe. And it's fine, intellectually great, we don't believe it. I get that. But we don't act that way, right? So when Denise goes to work, she is looking for more success. She wants, you know, she doesn't want failure, right? So that's what Denise is focused on, just like me. So from the spiritual person's point of view, though, we have to turn this on its head. We have to commit to what does happiness really mean? And so we talk about happiness being an internal job. So happiness changes from achievements, resources, money, hearing compliments, being famous, notoriety, the best in our field, right? Well, when we're become committed to an internal approach, we start training the mind and calming it down. And everyone, I think, at some point has a very profound experience with meditation, in the sense that, wow, I've never experienced such peace in my life. Contentment. It might only last 10 seconds, but it's profound. Compared to that, these things here on this page are really gross. They're disturbing the mind. So the reason you and I can't stay in that place that we might be in for 30 seconds is because of habit. Like, don't mess with my Zen, right? Which is like, you know, you're disturbing my meditation. No one can disturb your meditation, really, except you. But we're baby beginners, so of course, you know, we need training wheels, and we need, you know, all those things. I'm not criticizing, but if you get really angry because the people next door have their leaf blower on while you're meditating, you're missing the point. Of course, we're not strong enough maybe to really focus when they have the leaf blower on, but at least don't get angry. That's a level of happiness, and you're working on your happiness. That's what the spiritual path is. So that when Lama Zopa Rinpoche is drowning in Walden Pond or wherever he was, and his mind is not moving, right? That shows a very high level of accomplishment. And when it's important to spend time with practitioners so you can have a role model. And there's many levels of practitioners, you know. So there's some that are their minds are so subdued that they are, maybe they're awakened beings, you know, fully awakened. It's hard to say. Okay. Okay, this is just more religiously, but I want to just get it out. So this self-cherishing mind has kept me in the prison of cyclic existence for numberless lifetimes. It's only that that's done it. Has compelled me to bear the sufferings of the sixth realm. So I'd love to spend time on that second bullet point, but we won't. But when we look around us, you know, if you look at the insects, those are people. You know, there's people inside there. There's a living being. It might have experienced the world in grosser terms. Maybe it doesn't have, you know, much thought, you know, sophisticated thought or anything like that, of course. But all those beings, you know what? So this is, if you look at a beetle, you know, I'm sure if I asked anyone here in the Zoom room, would you want to be the beetle? Exchange, you know, give up your life and become a beetle. I don't think anyone would say yes. Or a mosquito, or an ant, or a spider, or a bird even, or a cat, or a dog. I mean, okay, tomorrow morning, people say to me, oh, my next lifetime, I want to be a cat, because they're so content. And I just think, okay, so imagine yourself waking up tomorrow morning as a cat. How does it feel? It doesn't feel good. I don't care. And once you get rid of the fantasy about it, the reality of being a cat must be terrible, because, you know, no one would say, oh, I want to be a paraplegic, or I want to be a quadriplegic. But that being a paraplegic, quadriplegic is a much better quality of life than a cat. Cat can't do anything. I mean, it kills, it eats raw food. Yeah, anyway, I don't have, you know, imagine waking up in the morning, you got whiskers and all this fur covering you, and you can't tell anybody that it's happened. And you can't eat anything with your hands. You got to just, anyway, do I have to go do this? Sorry, I get a little extreme. I'm sorry. But you know, people always say, oh, what about a cat? But you know, on this planet, there are uncountable numbers of animals, and only like an infinitesimally small number of cats or dogs, right? Most, I mean, that you can't, they're not even statistically measurable how many are cats or dogs. I mean, compared to all the plankton and the barnacles and the mosquitoes and the flies and the ants. So we have been all those beings countless times, and maybe we don't want to go back there. But the thing that gets us to go back there is self-cherishing, because out of self-cherishing, I find that my partner has cheated on me, and the next thing I know is I'm coming after him or her with a knife, right? Happens. Or I'm so angry that I sue him or her for everything. We spend 2 years, 3 years in court, and we fight and we fight and fight. And then in the end, what does that lead to? Karmic imprints. We could look at that. Probably, maybe might lead to lower realms. Then you're done. You're gone. See you later. For how long? Until you can get a human birth, not just human birth, but one where we have the chance to study these ideas and practice spirituality. So that's what self-cherishing does. Okay. Has kept me in ignorance, continuously obsessed by countless problems, has prevented all opportunities of reaching freedom, has stopped my receiving any other realizations. You know, the reason we don't have big realizations is from self-cherishing. Okay. Has prevented the understanding and practice of the spiritual path, has not allowed the enjoyment of temporal happiness, continually destroys me in the future as it has in the past, changes harm, helpful living beings and objects and enemies who harm and destroy me. Okay. Therefore, the mighty one has, we're going to get to one verse, Michael, I think. Therefore, the mighty one has said that the field of sentient beings is similar to Buddha field. For many who have pleased them have thereby reached perfection. If I do not actually exchange my happiness for the sufferings of others, I shall not attain the state of Buddhahood, and even in cyclic existence shall have no joy. Shantideva. So the text starts with a homage to the three jewels. The wheel, a sharp weapon, the wheel weapon that strikes the enemy's vital spot. I bow down to the great wrathful one, Yamataka. So prostrating, this is the beginning of the text. That's the first verse. Prostration to Yamataka. Yama is the Lord of Death. Taka is the executioner. So it's the executioner of the Lord of Death, or the antidote to death. That's what Dharmakashita is making prostrations to. And this text is the execution, executioner Yamataka, who, now Yamataka, we're not talking about someone who was born such and such a year, you know, like that. It's the state of mind. It's a wrathful state of mind of wisdom. The embodiment of the knowledge is Manjushri. Yamataka is considered the wrathful aspect of the Buddha of wisdom, who is Manjushri. The embodiment of the knowledge and wisdom of all the Buddhas, well, 3 times, is Manjushri. And he has a peaceful aspect, a slightly wrathful aspect, and a very wrathful. Okay. So prostration to Yamataka for a text is unusual, but when it's destroyer of the inner enemy, which is a destroyer of self-cherishing. That's what that mind is. So here Manjushri, of course, represents the wisdom of emptiness, and Yamataka is his wrathful emanation or wrathful aspect. Now, why is because it's a little bit like when the self-cherishing mind comes up, if we use the approach of Manjushri, we'll probably meditate on emptiness. I'm just talking generally. But when we use the method of Yamataka, it's more like it goes right at it, and you see the self-cherishing, and it's almost like you start yelling at it. That, get out of here, you've done nothing for me, you're useless, kind of a wrathful approach. No time, no patience, no tolerance for self-cherishing, just slay it. Okay, that's the foe. And that approach is Yamataka, which is a grasping at an impossible self that doesn't exist at all, and at our self-cherishing. And we need wisdom to discriminate between fantasy and reality. Okay? Okay. Well, I did that. I did one verse. I didn't lie. I didn't cheat. Okay. So, any questions? Did that make sense to you, or was it throwing too much at you at once, too religious, too theoretical?
Hey, Karuna, I have a quick question, actually. From what you're saying, it sort of seems more, instead of attaining something, like attaining enlightenment, we're more like getting rid of diluted states of mind, which is sort of backwards from how I was brought up. In the West, we're always trying to gain something. Could you look at it, or is that an incorrect way
I think
to
they
look
talk
at it,
about
so
that.
we're
I think they
getting rid
talk
of
about,
something?
yeah, I think that, you hear many references to that understanding. For example, they say, you don't create enlightenment, it's there. You recognize it. And often the recognition is what's in the way of the recognition is all the afflictions, disturbing emotions. So yes, when they're eliminated, awakening is just there, ready to perceive. I think that it's possible just eliminating the destructive emotions wouldn't necessarily guarantee enlightenment, because I think like those very profound, there's some very profound meditations. I mean, I know you were talking pretty detailed here, but the long life, the formless gods, the formless meditations, the disturbing emotions do subside for eons, but they're not gone. So we have to be careful that we're not just suppressing, subduing. I mean, those are very, very profound states of mind. I don't want to minimize them, you know. And those beings can stay in that single point of concentration in the formless realms for literally eons, hundreds of millions and billions of years. Sure would seem like those disturbing emotions have been subdued, right? So what's missing is the understanding of the emptiness of inherent existence. They still have a sense of self. So yeah, it's just kind of a sort of a deeper way of approaching it, so that we don't just, but with wisdom subduing the disturbing emotions, then I think awakening it just gets revealed. It's just there. That's my point of view. It doesn't have to be created. Yeah. But last thing, but there are causes to creating that, right? You have to create the causes to I mean, you can't just sit around and do nothing. Yeah. Anything else? That's it. So I hope it wasn't too much content for you. I hope that you continue. And this is just, I don't say this was just an introduction at all. I don't want to say, like I said, the Wheel of Sharp Weapons, Geshe Jampagazzo, one of my teachers who I knew very well, taught it for many months. So it's a deep text, it's a profound text. And what we did here is not, it's a really, really good foundation for you to continue studying this text or any Lojong text. So we'll leave it there. And then think that the 4 days, 4 evenings we spent together, we created a very, very strong connection now. That's stronger than if we went to a party together. Well, could go to a party together and all get drunk and then, I don't know, do really destructive things. That might be a strong connection too. That'd have a different result. Anyway, thank you. So think about all the time we spent together from the first moment to now, and this countless mental imprints we created together. I think mostly of a virtuous or good nature, good content in the mind. So all these imprints, we dedicate them, that they all ripen into the full awakening mind. Now that means relative awakening mind. That we talked about the end, the bodhicitta mind, and the absolute bodhicitta, which is the emptiness of that mind, or the understanding of emptiness clearly. Dedicate all these merits to that, all this good karma to that, all these positive imprints to that. And that we ourselves we will attain full awakening, by the way. We can't say about other people, well, everyone maybe eventually, but we're setting the causes in place right now. So it's definitely going to happen. And then we just think quickly, so that we can quickly save all the sentient beings. Think for that, like that for a moment. And then for as long as space endures, for as long as sentient beings remain, so too will I abide to relieve the suffering of the world. Okay, thank you. Good night. Stay in touch.
Hey,
I don't
Karuna,
know the
before
long
we,
life prayer, but I would like to wish long life to you, Karuna.
Okay, thank you.
Before we go, I just, on behalf of LMB and all of us, we just wanted to thank you for teaching us Karuna. And
Okay.
now you have to come back and finish up the text since you got to
Okay.
the first.
Okay, we'll try. If people like to, and if we have the karma together, which we probably do, then we'll do it. Anyway, thank you very much. There's no one teaching without students, right? So it's a dependent arising. So thank you. So I have to thank you also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Karuna, your
night.
next class is on
You.
Tuesday.